Welcome to MU-157. And today we're going to speak about chakras in music. And presenting Michael Vick. Welcome, Michael.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. All right, so like Johnny said, we're going to be talking about chakras in music. I'm focusing on this as building a tuning system with the legit frequencies from chakras, which date back to 1500 to 500 BCE. So what I'm going to do is just go over two main ones from that area and then give you the frequencies and everything associated with each of the frequencies. And in that process, we'll be able to hear the individual frequency. One thing I also do at the end of each portion of that is play them all at the same time. So you get to hear them at the same time. And at the very end, I'll play you a short piece I did using, I'll show you the tuning at the end, but using that tuning, most of the pitches in a 33 pitch tuning I created. And as you can all imagine, everyone here being a microtonalist, these pitches are microtonal by nature, not by some forced thing. So that's why I kind of want to say that, these chakras are microtonal. Like if you do, I was referencing Irv Wilson because Vitold and I were talking yesterday during the sound check. He did similar stuff with plants, and other people had done things throughout history, and I'll cover a little of that in the intro. But I wanted to have everything organized, and I'll just go in and out of that to kind of talk through stuff. And if anybody has questions, certainly feel free to ask.
I'd like to start with a question.
Yes, Johnny, thank you.
So, my understanding of chakra, which might be different for each person, is that these are points on the body that are sources of energy that can be mentally focused upon with the brain to enhance the body, literally, in certain senses. How do you get a pitch frequency to correspond with those chakras?
All right, so that's what we'll cover. And we'll refer to, and that I'll go over this, but prana, the energy that runs through us is prana. And these, again, go back thousands of years. I'm not just pulling stuff out of the modern times. I'm going to play y'all the stuff that is the oldest, and then I'll show you quickly the stuff that's more from modern, like Gregorian chants time, the Solfeggio and all that. I'm not focused on that. I'll just show you that it's kind of evolved. But yeah, you can do that through thought, but you can also do it through sound vibration, the sound itself, but also just the vibration of it. And then I'll show y'all some. They're not necessarily tuning forks or instruments. I play them as instruments and use them as tuning forks, but they're actually quote unquote used for healing. I do not claim any of that stuff, but I'll go over kind of what you're saying in high detail, Johnny, and that's a good point you're making too, because it's valid. So, but I like unvalid points too. So, so with this, welcome here. I have a disclaimer. Like I said, many of these topics, today imply benefits to a healthy life, but we do not endorse these claims. The whole point is to show what's out there throughout history, and then how to build a tuning system. And when you look at the chakras, what all of us being musicians will notice, the chakras don't move in a chromatic movement. They're not necessarily random either, but that's something that we'll be able to see and hear. To get started with this, I want to bring in three different groups within the past 100 years that may not actually be musicians, but are from the scientific field or the spiritual meditation field, who know about the power of sound and the power of vibrations. First off, Nikola Tesla, one of the most brilliant people that we know of that was on the planet. He knew about this in deep terms from a scientific point of view, from energy to frequency and vibration, and how that can be used in a totally different way. Again, he was not a musician, but he understood this in a high capacity. From there, I like to go to Yogananda. Now, people will debate his quote here where he talks about Indian music being divided into 22 Shrutis, and this is a quote from him from 1946. These microtonal intervals permit fine shades of musical expression unattainable by the Western chromatic scale of 12 semitones. So Yogananda would have been great as part of Microtonal University, because even back then, he and Harry Partch probably could have gotten along well. But a key point in kind of what he's saying, the 7 basic notes in Hindu mythology use color. So this is a little divergent, but it brings in color with animals. So doe with green, and the peacock, and then with red, and then the skylark, and this kind of stuff that he's going into. So if you bring this up to certain people who've studied Indian music, they may dismiss it and say, well, this and that. This is not a debate about what's legitimate or not. My point is that people have known about this, probably, microtonality, not even that word, but just pitches, frequencies being interesting or helpful or whatever, for thousands of years and beyond. And this is, 1946. This is in one of his books that technically a lot of high-level people have read, which still mystifies me why we still have to hide in the corner doing microtonality. I mean, we're not necessarily deep in the corner, but, whatever. Moving on. Now, I'm showing Daphne Oram. Daphne Oram, the electronic musician back in 1960, sent one of her electronic pieces to the great classical violinist Yehudi Menuhin. And this is a quote. Yehudi says about her piece, it will be most interesting to hear the results of the scale system of 81 divisions, which enables you to preserve pure intervals as well as the tempered modulating ones. That's Yehudi Menuhin, and if anyone knows him, child prodigy, but he did, when he got older, he learned Indian music on the violin and this kind of stuff here, where he's open to this as a possibility, the idea that there are other pitches that are valid in a world where, there's still people who only think 12 are. So moving from that, the way I got into this sound was just that word, sound. I could hear things that I thought were great that weren't part of any sort of system. And through that, over the past few decades, I've worked with tunings that use DNA-derived systems, and I've also created tunings using actual stars, the elements of the stars, exploding stars in the universe, through the Larmor frequencies. And you can kind of see here how some of that is up, and in this one, it just shows where the notes would be on the piano.
You may explain it later, but I'm a map geek, and looking at this map, I'm curious, what is that latitude that's emphasized there?
So longitudinally, if you go around the planet, that's where you can have those type of frequencies from the Earth. And for example, Coral Castle in Florida has the only modern monolithic structure ever built. Ed Leedskalnin built that in early 19th century. He actually even moved it, and no one really knows how he did it. And the only thing he said was that he had the secrets of the Egyptians to do it. But the land he built on was the worst land in Florida. Limestone and coral. And in each one of these areas along this node, and I'll also put in Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, each one of these places has an underground water source. So that plays a role in it. So it's on an exact line around the earth, but it's also the type where somehow they're using some sort of vibrations to get it. And through sound, you get vibrations, because some of the stuff I'll talk about, how they get the frequency to where we can hear it, is coming from, you know, frequencies we just can't hear. Now, what I can play for you just a snippet of is about 10 years ago, I released some stuff on one of my albums using some of these frequencies and other frequencies. After this, everything I'm going to focus on is just using those frequencies. But you can kind of hear how you can make music with this, but still sound a little bit different and have those qualities involved. What we're going to be dealing with most of today are using hertz. And this chart is based on A440, and it has certain notes, obviously from 12 tone, equal temperament. But the kind of point of using this as a reflection is to show that these notes fall in between all of these. And I have done synths for a couple of them, but I'm mainly going to be dealing with hertz today, because it's just easier to get the representation of what's going on. And I also make a reference to the great Harry Partch. Harry Partch, as all of us know or should know, he used G at 392 hertz. So that's actually part of the hertz system that I'm using to base this on. So he wasn't opposed to using G at 392 hertz, which is part of that system. So moving from that, let's talk about what actually chakras are, because that's the kind of thing that we've been going over before I even got started here. So prana, what we're dealing with the 7 chakras, it's obviously deep in the Hindu philosophy with Kundalini yoga and tantric traditions, but it's the energy. It's the vital force that's in all of us. They refer to as prana. And that prana goes through the energy channels, nadis. And there's 7 chakras that are the major chakras that, you know, purportedly can help with physical, mental well-being and this and that. But technically they're said to be 114 chakras throughout the whole body. Now, I kind of relate some of this to aromatherapy or reflexology, these type of healing things that can seem a little bit evasive. None of this stuff, I believe, is evasive. I think it's right there, and if you're open to receive, then it can be something that can benefit you. So if you go back to 1500, 500 BCE, like they were saying, Johnny and Vick told, the Rig Veda, if you go back to the Vedic teachings, you'll see that that's really when this started to form. Now, we're going over different time periods here. So some of that You get the Hindu and the Tantric and even Buddhist traditions in what's referred to as the classical era. And you see with Yoga Sutras around 200 CTE or CE, you'll see that there's even a more comprehensive understanding of the chakras. So I view this as a science. Now, people can say pseudoscience about anything. This is a legit science. If people don't understand it, that's beyond them, but you can see how it's evolved over time. So then it goes from there. It even goes deeper into meditation and yoga within Hinduism. And the Shiva Samhita from 1500 CTE provides chakras and these balancing, how you can use sound to balance, sound and vibration to balance oneself. And they're targeted areas, which we'll see in a minute. And then you can see Buddhism in the 8th century building upon this, and it becomes an integral part of what they're doing at that time period. So we jump ahead to our modern 19th, 20th centuries. We're getting there. You see the Theosophical Society and certain people in there were translating the tantric text, and comes out with a book, I believe it was in 1919, called The Serpent Power, which kind of influenced Western chakras, but was picked up in the later half of the 20th century by the quote-unquote New Age movement. Now, I don't aspire any of this to a New Age movement or any of that. I'm a musician and an artist, so just keep that in mind. I'm just going over the basic details of where this comes from. If people did this with 12-tone equal temperament, people might not play it as much, but it's a different discussion. But with that said, it kind of keeps evolving to where we are today, and it's used for energy healing. I don't know if anyone's done Reiki, but it's also with yoga and meditation, and it's blending Eastern and Western ideas with chakras. From my personal opinion, I do yoga and meditation, and sometimes I go to do it, and they say they're doing this, but they're not really playing these frequencies. They're playing some pop version of something. It's certainly not targeting these chakras. And I find that a little bit disenchanting, because this is something that can benefit if you're open to it. Now, the general idea is that music makes people feel good. It doesn't matter whether it's these pitches or what. Music can make people feel good. It can bring out totally different emotions that you can't even put into words at times. Oh, that piece was beautiful. Well, there's a lot of depth to sound that gets overlooked, and that's kind of what we're going over here, the depths of what one note is, and then the relationship of that frequency to the other frequencies. We're microtonalists. That's what we do. So moving on, let's take a look here. So here we have a basic diagram. Now I'm going to make each one of these larger for you, but as Johnny was saying with his first question, you can kind of see where the chakras are, the 7 chakras, and the points on the body, and how to target those. And between the two chakra systems I'm going to go over, what you'll see is that the frequencies are roughly, and this is a rough estimate, about a fifth apart. And they imply the same sort of idea, but the second one kind of branches off a little bit more into the universe. So here is Muladhara, which I'm sure all y'all can read that. I hope you can now. But it gives the basic notes that go along with it. And I know Johnny liked the vowel, but it gives the element and the sound it's associated with and the energy. It's a grounding frequency that it says. And the bija is referring to the essence of where it comes from. So you'll see that on these charts. Now what I have here, I have 3 different versions of this 256 hertz. So I'm using Henry Lowengar's Shruti box to generate one of the sounds. I also have stainless steel tuning forks from India, which I'll play on this too, and then I'll combine them. These are short little samples. Now for the tuning fork at 256 hertz. And now we join them in unity. So you can kind of hear the interplay at a certain point between the Shruti box and the tuning fork, which I find very musical. You know, it can bother somebody, but that's a whole different discussion. I don't have tuning forks for each one. So the sacral or the Fadisana. Now this would be D at 288 hertz. And again, you start, since we're all musicians, we start to see that there is a relationship between these frequencies. And the thing I like about these, that kind of reminds me of Harry Partch's, some of his tunings, is that some of these notes are pretty close within sense of each other, and some obviously aren't. But I think that's kind of a curious part for us as musicians building a tuning system. It's nice to have some pitches that are extremely close because it works with chromaticism, it works with tonal color, it works with vibration. So with that, I'll play you a sample of this. This is 288 hertz. So out of context, you know, you could say you like it or it's just a tone, but it is that frequency. And if we change the hertz, you would hear the difference. It's like in regular music. So moving from that, we go to Manipura. Now this is 320 hertz. This is the element of fire, roaring fire and power, E. You know, as guitarist, where we have Chris here, Stephen James Taylor, you know, you get the low E, you know, get that going. I prefer low E flat, but that's a different discussion. But with this, you'll hear nice little sound. One thing I kind of reference with this is that all of us know about Lamont Young, and when you would go to his place, he would play sine waves, you know, in the 500,000th, excuse me, harmonic, and you're surrounded and kind of bathed by these tones that, you know, in theory, and I believe he understands a lot of this too, just because he's highly educated and an innovator in the field of sound, is that, yeah, they can kind of make you feel a certain way. It's kind of like lavender can kind of calm you, but if somebody's in a rage, give them lavender and good luck with that. But moving on, we're on the fourth one. And this is F at 341.3 hertz, and you kind of see it's and the element of air and compassion and love. That's the history, again, that goes back to 1500 BCE to our modern times, and you have the color of green, and this is referencing your heart. So that's the fourth one, Anahata. And moving from that, we go to the throat, Vishuddhi, and this is the throat, but it's also the sound, the Shabad sound of crickets. It's for communication because obviously, you know, speaking. And then the vowel I, and it's the note G. That's at 384 hertz. Again, Partch used 392. So there's clearly a difference. And this is the element of ether, the ether that's around us. That could even imply even death, even the ether, the other world. But in this reality, communication, but creation. If you've ever seen a child born, it's the most amazing thing. I've seen it twice, and it's fascinating. So creation, that's one way for creation. And that's G at 384 hertz. And going from there, we have Ajna, which is A. Again, this is an A440. This is A at 426.7. This is a type of A that, you know, you could use for anything and then base the rest of the tuning. So in 128, starts on A, you could do that and use that as the A even and go from there. But this is the element, this is all of the elements, and this is the third eye. Talking about, oh, well, you can only see this way. If you can get in touch with the subconscious, the third eye, this is something that is there and you can gain through meditation and through yoga. And as you can see, that's with insight and wisdom, the third eye. And now for the seventh chakra, we're going to go Sarasrara. I'm not Indian, but when they say it, boy, it rolls off the tongue like a mango lassi. So with that, the Shabad sound is Om. So, but the vowel is E. And this is a B at 480 hertz. And the crown, you transcend. This is the transcendence that we all want. If you can't get enlightenment because the world's too noisy, you transcend that to gain enlightenment. If you sit in between the noise and try to get enlightenment, maybe you could do it. Good luck. And this is B at 480 hertz. Now for the coup de trois, let's switch over, and this is all of them that we just heard, all seven at the same time. Now stop the share now. I'll go back to it, but that's the first lineup of the sounds of the chakras. What you'll hear in the next one is that the frequencies are a little bit lower, but when I do the piece, I put all these together, and I don't want to directly relate this to 128, but I know Johnny likes to say like all those notes in his tuning kind of relate to each other in such a way that you quote unquote can't have a wrong note. I mean, this is kind of the same thing. I'm not injecting. I'm not at this point with what we're doing. I'm not bringing in guitars and stuff like that and basses because I tend to be an artist and I begin to manipulate things and take them out of context. And I want all of this in context of what we're doing. And if anyone feels better already from all this, well, good for you. You're feeling it. So, any questions so far? Or new questions? Because you had them before I even started. You can kind of see that the different forks, like this is I don't know if you can see that, but you can trust me. This is the 256 fork, and with that it matches up to these healing ones that I have here. These are the ones that are for vibration, that, like, for example, this one, if you get vibrating, you can put up to your throat, and I'll play it for you, and I'll put it up to the mic. Can y'all hear that? It's low, but so what these are used for are, again, are quote unquote healing, but you'd kind of put it up to your throat. And the 256 tuning fork I have here is for music, and that's something where if you go back and look at the Vedic writings, you will see that frequency, 432 is another one that's essential, and 432 was also used with the pyramids. I'm just giving the history of it and how we as musicians can build a tuning system from it. And all that stuff does go back thousands of years. This is not a modern thing that's come up.
Well,
But
yeah, the thing I'm really wondering is it actually documented that 256 hertz is that frequency
Yeah.
from way back then?
It's well documented. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
All right.
well documented frequency that's used for the specific healing that's in there.
but how was it documented? Like, first of all, everything in the Rig Veda was originally sung.
Well, right. They are singing these pitches, but it's been kind of rewritten over time as that is the frequency. I mean, this is
So you're
something
saying
over time.
it's an oral tradition.
Correct. It's an oral tradition. It came from singing. So is the vowel for that, but that's the earth that they're referring to, the sound of the earth. And there are different frequencies that reference the earth, but 256 was one of them, with thunder and earthquakes as part of that sound. You're supposed to use it for grounding yourself, is basically how they're referencing it. And this is again throughout time.
I noticed the navel was the sound Om, which is, you had OM, but I guess I've seen more commonly AUM. And that's an actual Sanskrit spelling of that sound. And that is the sound that you prepare yourself, at least that one I learned, to meditate. So even though you're focusing on that chakra, which would be the navel, which is sort of the middle, at least the middle of a baby, because people change. But this would feed the chakra of the head. In other words, you're directing the energy to one chakra to energize an actual different chakra. And I'm just saying that I had the personal experience that you could focus on that particular chakra, which is in fact Om, which is the most common meditative mantra of no meaning to clear your mind, which would be an egoless relationship to the universe.
Yes,
I
that
have
is. Yeah,
I
Jeff.
have an interesting thing to say about Aum or Om, however you pronounce it correctly. But
But
the,
Om.
my understanding of it, then this will interest us as microtonalists. My understanding of it is that, well, first of all, as background, Indian linguistics, which goes way back into the Sanskrit era, was very the linguists were very astute about phonetics. The entire classification of the Indian syllabary, it's not an alphabet, it's a syllabary, was based on the different parts of the mouth and the different vowel formants and things that they produced. And my understanding of that syllable, Aum, is that you're starting with your mouth wide open with as many frequencies as you can get, as many harmonics as you can get. And as you go from ah,
Yeah, we don't hear you anymore because you don't have original sound on.
oh,
But it
sorry.
acts like a
Well,
filter in a way.
Right.
anyway, well,
What
anyway,
you ought to say is you're going to a sine wave.
you go beyond that because you end up closing your mouth and just ending up with just a hum.
Right.
So
Well, a
so
hum is
you're
a sine wave, almost.
you're taking the richest harmonic sound that you have and filtering it down piece by piece until there's nothing left.
And that's why you're called a humming being.
But that's, from my understanding, that's why you start your meditation with that, because it prepares your mind to draw itself from the external world inward into nothingness, basically.
Well, unless it was transcendental meditation, and then you paid some money to get a
Right.
mantra just for you and nobody else.
Right.
Yeah, a little snake oil. All right, so good question. So maybe you'll have some more. I'll go over the next group. Now with this group, we're going to be getting more out into the universe. We're getting personal too. We're going to stay personal health, but we're going to get into what's around us and what could be influencing us. There could be just vibrations from the sun influencing us that we can't hear. And people talk about electrical frequencies all around us through all this technology. That can affect you. It doesn't it's not necessarily going to make you feel good, but it could make you feel bad. So they're those type
Just
of
like
things.
light are frequencies, you know. So and ultraviolet affects us. It burns out the skin. Yes, so it's all out there.
Yes, you are very correct. So the more conscious that we are of these things, the healthier that we can be, and maybe all the diverse groups will actually get together and stop war is what I want. Because when I was younger, I actually spoke, my father worked for the federal government at the Navy, and I got to speak to a defense contractor and talk about how to use sound to stop war. Don't make the low sound destroy somebody's insides, but make them put down their weapons. And this company wanted nothing to do with that. I showed them certain frequencies, and that was over 20 years ago. So, 25 years ago. So here we are with the next group. And as you'll see, we're using the same chakras, okay? But the pitches, the frequencies are different slightly. Like I was saying, almost the fifth, give or take. I don't want to split hairs on that right now, but what I've put here are the standard 12 EDO hertz versus what these hertz are, so we can have a relationship, because I'm not using fractions, I'm not using cents. I want us to have a hertz relationship. I've always liked using hertz because you can land on a specific thing, and it's kind of easy to reference through oscillators and stuff like that. But you can see these are 194.18 hertz, 210.42. You're dealing with specifics, and we know, as with microtonality, the specifics are important. I mean, Harry Partch had a whole chapter on the falsicity of 2 cents difference. So you have that kind of thing going on with this, but you can see how each one, it affects the body, but you're also affecting the universe. So let's go to the root. So this is the same root as we saw before. This is going back to that time, but it's a different approach in the frequency. But cross-referencing these, you will see a similarity. But this is referencing how to release fear and guilt when hearing this, and it's based on the sonic day, which is the time it takes the Earth to complete one rotation with respect to the stars. So you take that in mind. That's a frequency that is constantly occurring that we may not hear because it's happening at a frequency that we have to lower the octaves. Now, let's listen to it. All right, so that's that frequency. The main difference that most of us will hear compared to the first group of 7 is that these are lower. These are a lower sound that gets, I don't know, I kind of prefer the lower with some of this, but when I'm doing music and writing with this, I love having that. I have a 33 pitch range, which has the low to the high, because I mentioned the Solfeggio, the slightly more modern version of this, the pitches tend to get even higher. So just keep that in mind, that some of this will be a little bit lower. So that's the first, and that's the root. So we go to the sacral, which is at 210.42 hertz, and I put the rough pitches there with what the actual note is. And again, the other reason I'm putting this other note there is because if you go and do yoga and meditation, a lot of times people are just playing a standard D from a synthesizer, not retuned or anything, or they're tuning their guitar or whatever to that. My point in all this is use the specific pitches if you're going to do this. Don't just go, oh, well, that's G sharp, so I'm just going to, no. Try to use these specific frequencies and then build the system around those. And with this enables change, but it's based on the synodic cycle of the moon, which is completing one full cycle of phases. So think how the moon goes through its cycles. This is that frequency. It's ever going around us. So that's the second cycle. You can kind of see a pattern here of the relationships. I know a lot of us have pretty good ears, and if you can kind of remember the first group with this group, you start to hear that there is a relationship, a clear one, between them. So I'm going to switch to the third, the solar plexus, as they refer to it on this one. And this enables transformation, but what it's also doing is working with the sun's pulsation. And I want to be clear, because I know Johnny and I have been talking, I know he's mentioned quantum a lot. All of this is referred to as quantum. It's thought of that way, as through quantum physics. It's the same type of thing that we're dealing with here. It's a quantum thought that's been developed over thousands of years, and these pulsation modes involve over 100,000 tones occurring simultaneously. These tones obviously are not audible, but it's like with the DNA pitches, you have to work with the octaves to bring those into the human perception. And these are observed through surface motions, light intensity, even the Doppler effect comes into play here in getting this as a frequency, a legitimate frequency to use. Ah, so warm, so warm. Oh yeah, it's the sun. Go figure. So, moving from there, we go to the fourth, the heart, which should be important to all of us. The heart. It helps connect. If you don't have a heart, you know, it's hard to see where other people are coming from. But this goes back to what we were just talking about, Ohm, the Earth's vibration frequency. So this also goes back to the calming, how to calm oneself, and how it can be used in getting your body ready to meditate. So as Joe was saying, the frequency of doing Om and opening your mouth wider to get all the harmonics in, then settling on whatever that internal frequency is for you, representing the earth, yourself in the universe on the earth. And let's hear this one, 136.10, not 136 hertz, 136.10. So you could get your Om going on from there. Now we get into some of the other planets. So we obviously had the Earth in there, and then you had the sun, the moon. Now we're at Mercury. Mercury is the closest to the sun, and it oscillates at this frequency, 141.27 in the 30th octave. So this has to, quote unquote, be brought down to earth for humans to hear. Because I always bring up, and Johnny and I were talking about this the other day, hearing on earth is different than hearing in space, hearing in water. Sound is traveling through the air. Those sound vibrations travel, and the sound vibrations are effective by your location, by your environment. So just keep that in mind with some of this stuff. So let's hear this one at the 30th octave of Mercury. Nice and warm. So we switch now to the third eye, the sixth chakra. And this encourages intuition to be awakened. And I don't know if there are any women in the group. I can't see anybody. I can't see everybody now, but this is for planet Venus, which promotes divine feminine energy, balance, and harmony. So this can bring out for men a more feminine side of energy balance and just having harmony. And if men can tap into that, there could definitely be a more peaceful planet. So planet Venus is promoting divine feminine energy balance and harmony. And just in general, for anyone or everyone, it encourages intuition to be awakened. Don't doubt your intuition. Follow your intuition. And you can use this frequency, which is at 221.23 hertz. And everybody knows from the standard 220, which is the 440, everyone seems to rave about, but not us. Here we go. So that's there to promote healthy relationships and intuition and the divine feminine energy. So now we go to the crown. The crown. This connects us to the universe, and this is based on the Platonic year, which is the time it takes for the Earth's axial precession to complete one cycle, which is 25,800 years. And if you take in consideration what I was talking about earlier with the pyramids or even Coral Castle, the modern monolithic structure in Florida, they are set up to follow the precession of the Earth. Their openings and their alignments are lined up and take in consideration that 25,800 years. How did they build structures of such mass and have them perfectly aligned with something occurring 25,800 years from now? We as modern society can't even comprehend, 20,000 years from now, much less another 5,800 years. So let's hear this. This is 172.06. It's they're saying it's technically an F. So let's hear it. And that's with deep, and when I say deep, I mean deep transformation, change, and inner strength. Meaning, if you can connect to the universe, then you can go through life confident that you're connecting with all of your society that you're around. It's just a positive one. So those are the next 7. So let's take a listen to all of those at the same time. Ah, so warm. So warm. All right. I'll stop sharing for a second. So that's the next group. Hope no one fell asleep, but if you did, good for you. But what I'm showing here is that these are vital pitches, and when you get these organized, because I'm sure y'all could tell, being musicians, that again, these aren't chromatically moving like we think as musicians. This is one reason why, one of many, why I like Lamont Young. Lamont Young's tuning, is going up, then it goes down, then it goes back up. It's showing a different approach to how sound works. Or as Vitold and I, we're talking about gamelan. In Java, the octaves do not resolve. There's no resolution of the tuning, of the scale. That's almost unheard of. In the West, you do C to C for your major scale and so on. What it does, it creates a different mood, a different feel. Hey, it must be microtonal. That's the whole point of kind of why a lot of us got into this, is to get those different sounds, those different moods, those different feelings. I don't think any of us are saying our music's going to heal you, but we're saying, hey, you may hear something different in this because, and then each of us gives our presentation on why it may be possible to hear something different. And that's kind of the point of this, is that all of this is readily available to us. And in a world that seems moving more towards hate and division every single second of the day, why not have something that's doing the opposite, that's bringing us together? Kind of like we do here at Microtonal University. We bring in like-minded people, but let's take that to the streets. Let's take that to the globe. Let's take it to the universe. And if we can connect to that through sound, that's our expertise. I know a lot of us have other expertises too, but let's focus on music and sound. if we can grab a hold of that, maybe the trajectory of what appears to be a negative future could actually be positive.
I think it's a good point now to have echo. It seems like a good point to bring in that the new quantum physics is corroborating a lot of what Michael is talking about. So when you say that the Earth has a vibration, though, the new way of thinking of consciousness is that the Earth is conscious, the universe is conscious, the sun is conscious. Within a cell, there is consciousness. And if you want to, have it explained, you can say, well, the Earth has reception of data that makes it conscious. It's aware of temperature. It's aware of moon reaction to its waves of the ocean. There are actually 4 categories. I can't remember them all, which makes for consciousness, which means that human beings, the model, no longer holds that human beings create consciousness in their insular brain and connect it to the universe. That's not true. The consciousness is already there.
That's the prana. That's
the model. Energy. The models that we've been seeing are to connect to those different aspects of the universe. Now, I was going to say about Joe, and then you please, Joe, continue, is that, there's this slight skepticalness about the objectivity of a particular precision of hertz, which, by the way, is based on vibration per second, which is like a kind of Earth model. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I interpreted it earlier as an oral tradition, of which I imagine, Michael, people argue about. But there's a certain inherited cultural understanding that the human being has these 7 chakras. I don't quite understand the other 7, how they connect, because they seem like the same 7, but like a different angle of them. But Joe, please.
When you were talking about the planet being conscious, I was going to mention that I think scientists have pretty well documented that plants communicate with each other.
Yes.
So like trees actually communicate with each other in a grove of trees.
And with fungi also, they create one big network.
Yes.
Right.
Forests. That's quite
right. They're all working together. Exactly. Yeah.
My favorite is fungus. Fungus is amazing.
That too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because they're not animal, they're not plant. They're more animal than plant. But they brought the plants to the earth from the seas. Mm-hmm. So the fungus is the way that the trees really communicate. Because even when the roots can't touch, the fungus is communicating as what becomes the Higgs boson.
Oh yeah.
The glue that connects the dark matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That connects space, so that space doesn't go.
And fungus also plays a crucial role in the cycle of life and death. When things die, the fungus eats it and forms nutrients that nourish the next cycle of life.
Fungus fan club over here.
Yeah.
And who was the greatest fungus specialist among composers? John Cage. Yeah. That's a mycologist.
True.
Mycologist, yes.
And Central Park in Manhattan has the most variety of fungus per square inch of most any place on the planet. So if you
And
want to be,
there's another composer who we know who's also quite a mycologist, and that's Juhani Norvala.
oh yes,
He's really into that too.
yes, I have noticed. Because in Finland, you know, the fungus come out at certain times, and you can come and expect them, and then you want to eat them, and then, you know, let's not even start with psilocybin mushrooms, right? And so some people would now say that the changes in the brain as a result of these mushrooms actually are another way of humans connecting to the universe, another enhancement. And then you have this whole multiverse. How are you connecting to other dimensions? Sometimes, and this is something that kind of comes up with this topic, is the virtuosi of composition, of performance, who we've talked about as physicists working with physics, whether they discuss it verbally or not, they're creating it. I forgot where I was going to lead with this because it's all so mind blowing. But are they maybe like walking between the raindrops? It's like Zen, right? Are they as virtuosi dipping into other dimensions? Is this idea of creating a melody as a composer seems like there's no real method for creating a melody. It's almost the opposite of method. And all these great melodists, and I put at the top of that Bismillah Khan with the Shania. He's the guy the guru of sound that took this outdoor instrument, which is like the oboe, and brought it inside, tamed it, controlled it, mastered it. And he always talked about pulling ragas at will. Like, what kind of control is that, right? I was telling Michael the other day about watching this 5-year-old girl, and she had this ability that she could hear the singer sing different ragas, and this little girl, within like 2 seconds, spit out the name of the raga. Can you imagine that, Joe? She knew all the ragas. So at 5 years old, it's a tuning system to her. So she hears the raga, tells you immediately the name of the raga. And that's like, you know, okay, that's kid stuff. So, you know, there's that question about whether the virtuosi, meaning the people who make it look easy, that's how I mean virtuoso, whether they're going into another dimension.
Well, I mean, I think that's a fact. You play music. I've played music before and literally gone to a different plane because it's so deep. And even playing a banzuri, if you play that, you as a bassoonist, using your air or singer, you can go there even quicker if you're in tune with it, you know, personally.
India is totally, I mean, really, melody. And melody is what you can't construct. So the ragas are not anything but melodies. They're not scales. Right? They distinguish that. So, I mean, I'll talk about this next week. That's almost a third of the planet. And it's so insular that they're doing quantum way before. I mean, in the West, we say quantum mechanics is invented in 1920. And it's almost as if you can't, and people do use quantum very easily now, but it's almost as if you can't use it according to the, you know, aficionadi because it hasn't been invented until 1920.
They didn't
So,
understand it.
well,
They didn't understand what quantum was, and then they defined it, and then you look back in history and go, my God, the pyramids, that must have been quantum.
well, this is the funny kind of um oxymoron about the whole thing is clearly quantum has always been. How could you say it has a starting date? So what actually does have this starting date, and how does it change the concepts we've all held? Like, for example, consciousness. I mean, just take consciousness again. So then you go to a lizard brain. Look at that jump I just took. From the lizard brain, I'm not going to explain it, don't worry. From the lizard brain, we go to the monkey brain. And we know it changes because the monkey cares about what the other monkeys think. The monkeys are social. The monkeys focus tribally. Okay, now we jump to the humans. Now, how's the human brain different? The
We
human
can
brain,
perceive the future.
that's right. The human brain actually lives in the future. You plan your whole life by the future. But we're going to find out that time is a social construct, like race.
Hmm.
I'll save that for next week.
We'll never be able to celebrate birthdays again. I mean, when's your birthday? Oh, I don't know.
So it's,
Johnny,
mhm.
uh, you were talking about us living in the future. We're not the only species that does that. I mean, one example I can pull out of my head was crows who go and put like a nut out in a road for a car to drive over, crack it open for them. So
But
they have.
this just means that they have that kind of higher consciousness that they're in touch with. That's all that means.
In
It
fact,
doesn't mean, right,
that
it doesn't
exact
mean that
story,
humans are unique. It just means that I'm showing how consciousness works, that it's in the universe. The universe is consciousness, right? I mean, like I say, I'm going to talk about this next week. So it's not like something you have to like get a bugaboo now about, but it does go with what Michael's saying. And I'm trying to connect with the raga presentation we had at the beginning of this part of Mu, right? And how we talked about how, I don't know, I'm just reminding people that we could have a session every week on Saturdays just from the Indian perspective because it's that complex, it's that detailed, but it doesn't go by all the same Western rules. Okay? So, like expectations of tunings in Maqam in the Middle East has created rebellion, about from people from the Middle East to say, why are you trying to, concretize specific intervals? Here we have a totally different situation. Michael's giving us very precise intervals. What he's giving us is more accurate than sense by far. How are these intervals coordinated? I was surprised to hear two things today. One is a lot of low pitches. And two, that these tuning forks, one is for health, which buzzes more, because that's just the tessitura of the hertz. And then to use it musically simply means within the range of an octave that you can use for composing, or in a range that you want to use it for a piece. Now, I had a very dear friend, Elodie Lawton, who was well known in New York as a composer. And she would write regularly on this topic. I'm not sure where, Michael, you'd even find where the writings are, but she used to write for newspapers, and she was focused on the earth having a vibration. If the earth is conscious, that's a wave, isn't it? So that would be like vibration already, ipso facto, if the earth is conscious. And now we're saying the earth is conscious. So all that understanding that some people had might just be a sensitivity that some people have. And, you know, there's the people who think they've been reincarnated, and the people who haven't. Maybe the people who have, and the people who haven't. It's just that we're finding out more things now that do change how we've been inheriting our knowledge. It's like you have a chord, one note's at the bottom. You take away the bottom note, and now you perceive the chord. How? Well, you could perceive it as the chord that it was there originally, where the note was removed, and you still hear it in your head. Or you lock into the new sound, and all of a sudden, all those notes have a totally new relationship to each other. And that's ephemera. What Michael was showing was quantized relationships between chakras. Why quantized? Right? This is because it's not linear. They're not directly connected to each other, though we did find an example where one would be connected to another. So the choice of green doesn't make it any more green than any other. It's a label. In other words, the frequency of green has nothing to do with it. It's a consistency. And from what I understand from Michael, it's a consistency over time. And that's time as a social construct, because it doesn't mean India has all of the concepts of quantum, but the origin of the universe from early, and I say Hindu is not early enough because Vedic is earlier, is that vibration is the beginning of creation.
And that's what this is going after. Yeah.
Vibration would be the Big Bang.
And that vibration is still occurring today,
right,
in some form.
Right. And constantly going on as a wave. So everything is waves.
Right, it goes beyond sound. You've got, I mean, photons, electromagnetic waves, those what you have
Well,
here.
we're going to talk about a little bit about that next week.
Yeah.
But because it does all relate to DNA. DNA is just a molecule of the universe that has its own information and consciousness.
Well,
and again, it's going to be about how you describe consciousness. But it is a changing meaning. And I know some brilliant people in this world that are not able to make those changes. And that's a possible issue. And this is not to draw any conclusions about it or to make judgments about it. But, you know, consciousness was talked about in a very famous book, Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind, which came out in the 60s by a Princeton professor who I got to talk to on the phone a few times and devoted 2 concerts to, where one hemisphere of the brain communicates to the other. That's not like from the beginning, that's something that happens at a time or period or a development or an evolution or a mutation. I don't know. We could talk about that next week. But Michael, unless you have anything specific you want to bring in?
Well, you were talking about Sanskrit. I don't know if I mentioned, but chakra is from Sanskrit as chakra, So the H is gone and it means wheel or disc. So
Spiraling.
right.
Spiral or
Disc,
circling.
wheel. Right. So that's an old word applied to, the time, quote unquote, over time.
Which word do you think takes is in the superior position? Spiral or circle?
I like spiral better personally because spiral implies a lot more than a circle. A spiral can be like a conch shell is a spiral, not a circle.
But a circle is almost like knocked over the head. Duh, you're like in a zone.
Right. There's nothing wrong with the circle.
A
Chris?
circle is self-contained and finite. A spiral is not.
Chris?
Yeah, I would like to say that from an astronomical point of view, uh, the relationships between like the Earth and the Moon, Earth and all of the planets, and solar system to the galaxy, all that stuff is constantly changing. We're not at a set frequency. At one point, um, the moon was far closer to the Earth. There will be a time in the future where the moon will be far enough away from the Earth that we cannot have total eclipses anymore. So I would support the idea of it being a spiral. But these relationships are only relevant to our instant of time, which is from a geologic standpoint. If you look at the Earth being 4.5 billion years, I think it is, or is 4.7 billion years old. We're obviously in a very small instant of the geologic time scale of the whole solar system, let alone the universe, which is like 13.8 billion years old.
Right, and this is still changing. So there'll be new concepts. One is superposition. One is the whole question of beginning. And I could go on, Chris. So there'll be new concepts. They're going to definitely influence us. The one that what I found the most striking recently is time, because I know if you study geology, you're working within the sense of time as a necessary framework for people to measure their reality. But it's the fact that we use it to measure our reality that makes it a social construct. So if we can sense the past, we do it through the present, always. Just as we're using the present always to focus on the future. So
Well,
it's different. Go ahead.
if you look at relativity, I mean, if it's true that the speed of light is a constant, the speed of light in a vacuum is a constant, that basically we have a light cone that is what is our reality. If we can't see things that are
Faster.
it limits our perception by
We
having
can't see anything outside of the
that.
cone. Right.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Right. Yeah, it's absolutely, and I'm glad you said it's a constant. You can only use math to come up with what's faster. And it does have an effect because everything we see in the universe is through light. So when things are older than than an energy that permits light, or it's over, they've passed already, we can no longer see that deep into the past. And the past is easily 2/3 longer than the length of the earth. But again, it's already presupposing something, that there's a beginning. So, these are new questions that change. And again, I'm not talking to anybody individually. for each of us, it's a question of how willing we are, because we don't want to go crazy, right? How willing we are to learn from these changes. And it's kind of I'm kind of interested that learning from these what Michael has studied, and I'd like to hear what Indians have to say about this, Michael. I really would. I'd like to send this to Ashish, see what he says. Ashish basically says, I don't trust ancient Indian theorists. So that's his, starting point.
Well, I don't want to know what people don't trust. Tell me what you trust, and that will
Well,
give me.
that's what I have to find out. That's what,
Right.
that's to be learned. I don't want to presuppose him about it. And not just him. I don't know, what does Utsia think, right? In Delhi. Yehudi Menuhin, on the other hand, is famous in music history, if not microtonal history, because Bela Bartok wrote a solo violin piece for him. And he's at the end of his life, retiring in Asheville, North Carolina. I think it's tuberculosis. And he had put into presto not only quarter tones, but some third tones, some third tones. But Bartok complained. Now, let me say this right. Sorry. Yehudi Menuhin complained to Bartok and said, I can't play him. So you notice that quote from Michael was that he hoped to hear. He never would produce it. And even though he played with Indian musicians, they played in equal temperament for him.
Right.
Yehudi Menuhin was not necessarily a promoter of microtonal music, is what I'm trying to say.
No, I wasn't implying that either.
Okay.
I'm implying
I just want to make it
consciousness.
clear.
I'm talking consciousness. A lot of people are conscious of it, but don't recognize it.
That's due to Bartok and maybe Schoenberg, because Schoenberg has it in the first footnote of the theory of harmony about what it might be like to try a 55 equal temperament tuning. Right?
53.
53, he said?
Yeah.
Okay, 53. But that's just talk.
Yeah. Schoenberg actually admitted right in the book that he didn't understand all the mathematical stuff.
No, and I know one time where he tried to talk about the 13th harmonic, and it's just so wrong. It's funny. You could say anything you want about an interval, right? Because you got to use words.
Yeah, but even in 1911 in the Harmony Lera, he, in a footnote, he talks about ratios a little bit, and he says, according to Professor Stumpf, he's talking about Carl Stumpf, he said, if only I knew. This is Schoenberg talking. He says, if only I understood all this.
Yeah, it's too bad. I've read Carl Stumpf. I don't know if you have. And Stumpf is very culture-based. And, a lot of this goes back to an influence on Harry Partch. I forgot her name. She wrote the Greek Olos. And she's talking about
Kathleen Schlesinger.
And I know she has a lot of fans, no question about it. And she's, she deserves lots, but doesn't mean you're perfect. No one's perfect. So in her case, she's talking about reeds that she doesn't understand. She understands a lot about acoustics, but, when you put reeds on an instrument, it does something that only somebody who knows how to work with the reeds really understands somehow. So I think it breaks down on that. So like there's too much flexibility. The reed could make it higher or lower by, 30 cents. So therefore the exactitude doesn't make sense. So this is where, Michael, it's interesting. We'll always be skeptical of, learning something by rote. But it's the oldest in the world for transporting ancient information. And there's nothing older than the Rig Veda. Certainly not in the Western world.
Right.
Not in the Eastern world. And we haven't seen it yet in Africa or South America, though I'm not saying it's not possible.
Right. It's it's all possible, and I'm just showing this as information. People can take it for what they want, but I tell you, trust some of it, try it out. See what you
Right.
think.
You
That's
gave me the
more of what the
specifics.
point is.
You know what we could do is we could, Vittel, can you put those numbers into Scala to get sense values? Yeah, why don't we put it
That's
all
no
into
problem.
sense? David?
Well, I just wanted to say that the first system that Michael showed us were pretty close to ratios that we know from just intonation. And I was wondering if Michael had more information on where the two systems come from. The second set of relationships are more complex, and I didn't find a pattern. I just ran them through quickly to get the cent value, and I didn't find a pattern. But where do they both come from?
Right. I
Are
mean,
you?
that's kind of the thing I was covering in the beginning, that they come from the Rig Veda, the Vedic traditions, which are, from like 1500 BCE is where this is coming from. That's what I was saying, from the chakras, chakra, and the Sanskrit,
And
and they
the
develop. Yeah,
frequencies come from the Rig Veda then.
correct.
Okay.
But the Rig Veda, again, is originally sung. So you can get exact frequencies because it's sung. It's like you never think about that in the West, but from an Eastern perspective, you can, hold an exact relationship. You can learn it. I believe that. But the Rig Veda, which I've read, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, and that's only, again, hundreds of years later. And probably, I don't know what you say about it, Michael, but it might be like Kashmir seems to
Hmm.
be the general location for where this took place. And it's basically about a war between the Pawnees and the so-called Indian people. So if there's ever been an Indian people, it's because of the Rig Veda. And it's not a people, it's a bunch of tribes. But they all had like similar gods, Indras being the most prominent. And they only got together because the Pawnees were deemed threatening. And the Pawnees are credited with inventing cheese. They are reputed to be able to literally go into another dimension if you try to shoot them with an arrow, so it misses them. They were the first vegetarians because the other tribes, the Indian tribes, ate meat. In fact, that was one of the reasons for the war. They wanted the meat of the cows of the cheesemakers. So within this context, Michael is telling you that, and they probably said it more for health, didn't they?
Yeah.
That these are the ancient frequencies of the gods. But we're not going to say they're of the gods. Because, first of all, if we don't say it's of the gods, then it's for everybody. Because there are different gods. But if you focus on these frequencies, you're in touch with the universe. Whatever that means. I mean, in the Mahabharata, people claim, and that's later, and that's Hindu, and it's information in it, like with the Bible, you find stuff in it, and it finds out, oh wow, there is a island of Dwarka that they found underwater that has this, that they said there was, and there is actually a land bridge between Sri Lanka and India that you can see from outer space. So and they talk about these things. So within this context, they're saying there are these frequencies that have to do with chakras. Now, one of my favorite people in the world Wendy Carlos does not believe in chakras. We had a conversation about it.
Well, does
And
she believe
along
in
with
Santa
that is,
Claus?
well, no, it's more like acupuncture. So if you think of acupuncture, which is very much an Eastern, I mean, it's surgical. You can use acupuncture to operate on someone because, you know, they don't feel anything once you use it. You can disconnect, you know, feelings of pain. Only if you believe in it. Again, that's something Michael kept bringing up. You have to be willing, right? You know, like music or sound. First, we got to pass through the category of, are you willing or is it objectionable or not? But once it's not objectionable and you're willing, then you're using your sense of chakra, meaning your feelers to the outside universe, to generate sound. So the only quibble I had with you, Michael, about that was that people like to do Om in a group.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it more centered, which sounds Earth-like, and then tends to be lower because you want to make sure the men who are the majority in that group are going to be able to be comfortable with their note. And then you want it to be the same one, so one person starts first. And hopefully the person who starts first knows what they're doing. It doesn't modulate much. It stays, right? So if you're meditating, and if you're taking raga, it's a mode. Doesn't modulate. The most important note happens the most often. So it's mathematically a mode. And they are, I think, intended as chakra-based, where each person then actually who's going to do a raga is going to find their own center. And that's different. But going back to what Chris said, many particles, when you observe them, only are particles because you observed them. If you hadn't been observing them, they wouldn't be particles, or they'd be something like waves. So it's the act of observing that can make something stationary or not, which is what a photograph is. So if that's enough for today.
Well, can I play the final piece, and you can kind of hear it all in context?
The final piece. Yes.
Well, it's
Wait, before we go there, can I ask you something, Michael? Are you familiar with W.A. Matthews' theory book?
Yeah, I have that book. Yes, had it for 2
decades.
Because
one thing that always intrigued me about his theory is that he says that we feel just intonation in our bodies because of the resonances in the cavities inside of our bodies. How do you think that plays into this, what you presented about chakras?
Well, some of like David noticed, some of these are from just intonation, but another relative thing is that the notes tend to be longer in just intonation as well as the chakras because they're so in tune, they resonate longer. And through those vibrations, I think what he was saying was that you can feel that. But I mean, you can feel 12 tone too if it's loud enough. Part of it's decibel based too. How many decibels?
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's true. Yeah. You can definitely feel 12 EDO if it's loud enough.
Just intonation, you can easier hit the Helmholtz resonance, which every physical body has, because just intonation very often is derived from harmonic series, and of course that's the building block of many things. So that's why I think you can feel JI easier also, because it just acts or makes the Helmholtz resonance more prominent.
Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with the chakras.
Yeah.
Is that they're quote unquote in harmony. Harmony is kind of a loaded word, but they're definitely locked in more than 12, which seem to be arguing constantly the intervals. So, well, let me play one more little thing for you. But here is the tuning in hertz with some of the stuff applied, and here's the piece. Enjoy.
Very nice. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Serenity now. Serenity now.
Yes, serenity. And
Peace on earth.
those are a picture of the instruments there. I use no effects or anything. So they're all acoustic and natural. There's a little Tibetan bowl in the background there. Here, I can introduce you.
How ancient is the blue one?
Which, oh, these guys?
The blue one. No, just the blue one. How ancient is it?
Look, I'm not ancient.
No, I would suggest that you're actually alive now.
Yeah, I'm alive now.
I'm presupposing everybody here is.
Of course, you
Chalmers,
might be wrong.
so quiet.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank y'all so much.
All right.
Thank you. I'll see you next week.
Namaste.
Yep. Have a great day.
All right.
Thanks, Michael.
One of the pitches in there moves microtonally, and everything else moves according to the scale. That little. This has textures in it that remind me of John Cage compositions that I've heard before.